Imagine someone walks up to you today and says, "You're mentally unstable." Now here's the question, how would you prove that they're wrong? Would you stay calm? They might say, "See, that's because you've accepted it." Would you get angry? Now they can say, "Look how emotional you're getting." Would you defend yourself? They might think, "That's exactly what someone mentally unstable would say." See the problem? Once someone has already decided who you are, almost everything you do starts looking like proof that they're right. And that's exactly what one psychologist wanted to test over 50 years ago. In the year 1973, a psychologist named David Rosenhan asked a question that completely shook the world of psychiatry. The question says, can doctors really tell the difference between someone who is mentally ill and someone who isn't? It sounds like a simple question, but answering it would become one of the most controversial psychology experiments ever conducted. Rosenhan recruited 8 completely healthy volunteers. They included teachers, psychologists, students, artists, even a pediatrician. None of them had any history of mental illness. He sent each one to a different psychiatric hospital across the United States. Their instructions were incredibly simple. Walk into the hospital, tell the doctors you're hearing voices, and say those voices only repeat 3 words: empty, hollow, thud. Nothing more after that. He asked them to answer every question honestly. He told them to use their real name, their real job, and everything about their real life without lies. But unfortunately and surprisingly, the results shocked everyone. Every single volunteer was admitted. 7 were diagnosed with schizophrenia. 1 was diagnosed with manic depressive psychosis, what we now call bipolar disorder. Remember, none of them were actually mentally ill. The fake symptoms had already disappeared before they were admitted. So when they got inside, the volunteers stopped pretending. They told the staff, "The voices are gone." From then on, they acted completely normal. They chatted with people, they ate, they slept, they read books. One of the volunteers simply liked writing notes about everything happening around him. But the hospital didn't see that as curiosity. Instead, his file described it as writing behavior. Even sitting quietly became evidence of illness. Every normal action was now seen through one powerful label. Once the doctors believed these people were mentally ill, everything they did seemed to confirm that belief. Psychologists today call this confirmation bias. When our minds expect something to be true, we often notice only the things that support what we already believe. Here's the part almost nobody expects. The doctors never questioned whether these volunteers were healthy. The nurses didn't either. But several actual patients did. Some walked up and quietly said, "You're not crazy." Others asked, "Are you a journalist? Are you studying this place?" Ironically, some of the people diagnosed with mental illness recognized healthy behavior faster than the professionals. Eventually, every volunteer was released, but not because the hospitals admitted they were healthy. Instead, they were discharged with a note saying their illness was in remission. In other words, the hospitals believed they still had the illness. It just wasn't showing symptoms. When Rosenhan published the experiment, newspapers around the world covered the story. Many people were shocked. Some hospitals were embarrassed. One hospital even challenged Rosenhan. They proudly told him, "Send us fake patients, we'll catch them." Rosenhan agreed. The hospital carefully examined every new patient. Out of 193 people who came in, the doctors believed 41 were pretending. But here's the twist. Rosenhan had sent no one. Every single person they suspected was actually a real patient. The Rosenhan experiment changed psychology forever. Hospitals began improving how mental illnesses are diagnosed. Doctors became more careful about relying only on first impressions. But the lesson goes far beyond hospitals. Labels are powerful. Call someone lazy. Soon everything they do looks lazy. Call someone dangerous. Every mistake becomes proof. Call someone a failure. People stop noticing their progress. The truth is, once a label sticks, it's incredibly hard to remove. That's why we should be careful about the labels we give to others, and the labels we accept about ourselves, because sometimes the label changes what people see more than the person ever did. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments which famous psychology experiment you'd like to see next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.